Good morning. This is just going to be a quick video on the new moon today, September 14th, 2023. And new moons and full moons, those days are a little bit more intense than regular days, but they're not as intense as solar or lunar eclipses. But when you have a day which is a little bit more intense, well, the effects of what's going on that day can linger. And the new moon sets the tone for the the entire lunar month. At the full moon, that's sort of like a harvest where we reap what we have sown and we see how the has turned out. Okay, but today I just want to go over the new moon chart briefly, and then also how the new moon chart is affecting the chart that I use generally for America, which is a July 2nd, 1776 chart for the passage of the Resolution for Independence. Okay, well, let's see if I can share my screen and we can get started. And I just need to do a couple of little housekeeping things here so that I can see what's going on. And I think we're ready. Okay, well, this new moon has Sun and Moon conjunct in Virgo. So this is putting a focus on practical details, working through the problem. If we look at some of the aspects to this Sun-Moon conjunction, well, we have a pretty good opposition from Neptune in Pisces. Neptune does very well in Pisces. That's the sign it rules. And an opposition is an aspect of integration. We're trying to integrate certain things between the drives uh, represented by the planets at either end of this opposition. So in this case, we're working through a problem, trying to work out the details, but we're trying to integrate our visions of what should be into this practical application. Now, this month we have some tensions, but we also have some very good aspects. So the results are going to kind of be mixed. There are going to be some stresses throughout the month, but there are also going to be some things which work pretty well. So overall, things are not so bad. Now, we have a quincunx from transiting Chiron to the Sun Moon conjunction. And the quincunx, it's an aspect of adjustment. It means that changes or adjustments are going to have to be made. And Chiron often has to do with wounding. In its higher expression, it has to do with transcendence. And with Chiron in Aries, that is individual spirituality, spiritual warriors. But the majority of people will probably experience wounding first, as their hard shells have to be cracked. And so this month, we will probably see uh, a bit of a focus on working out the details on how we can deal with various types of wounding around the world. We have had wounding from wars that Russia has engaged in, wars they have begun. We have wounding from recent floods in Libya and earthquakes in Morocco. And so there's a focus on how to deal with those sorts of situations right now and how to make our visions a reality. Now, one thing which is going to help all of this is the fact that we have a grand trine. Parts of it are a little weak, but nonetheless, this might be in effect. We have a grand trine between the Sun Moon conjunction in Virgo, Pluto in Capricorn, and Uranus in Taurus. The strongest side of this triangle is going to be Uranus making a trine to the Sun Moon conjunction. And this means there's going to be a lot of creativity at work to help us hammer out these solutions. There's going to be some cooperation, maybe from people, individuals who have power, and that includes the autocrats and the dictators. Now, there's a second little triangle involving Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune. Uh, and it goes with this grand trine to make a kite formation. And again, this is going to be very helpful because we have these visions that we want to bring into reality. Pluto is going to lend its power to those visions to make it happen. And the planet Uranus and Taurus, it's going to lend creativity to these visions. And because Uranus is in Taurus, which is often concerned with money and financial matters, there may be some financial backing for making whatever visions people are having a reality. Okay, now transiting Pluto, Pluto up here, it's still making a square to the lunar nodes, and that is simply adding intensity to situations, particularly situations involving dictators and autocrats or other individuals with power. So this has been going on all summer. It continues to create sort of an underlying stress in the world. Uh, Jupiter is making a pretty strong square to Venus. Venus is in Leo. Venus is the pleasure principle. It's things people value. It's their right brains, their nonverbal brains. Leo is connected with the individual and individual creativity. Jupiter is in Taurus. Taurus again has to do with finances and stability. Jupiter likes to expand things. There is a bit of a disconnect and stress or tension between those things we want and perhaps the finances that are available. But since Jupiter expands things, there may be a tendency for people to go a little overboard right now and spend more than they can afford. Now, Jupiter is also making a strong semisextile to Chiron in Aries. Uh, Uranus is making a weaker semisextile to Chiron in Aries, but Uranus makes a pretty good sextile to Neptune up here. Neptune is making a semisextile to the North Node, which Chiron is somewhat widely in conjunction with. Chiron may be pulled into all of this. And what does this mean? Well, uh, this is an interesting configuration that's going to get stronger at times throughout the fall, in particular having Uranus making a sextile to Neptune and both of those planets making a semisextile to Chiron. Well, on the one hand, Uranus and Neptune, they're coordinating their functions together quite well. One is creativity, the other is vision and inspiration and spirituality. The semisextile, it's an aspect of adjustment. You have to make changes and adjustments to things. And we've talked about Chiron and Aries. It represents both uh, spiritual warriors, this higher transcendent individual spirituality, but also wounding of individuals. So, on the one hand, creativity and inspiration are working together to address wounding that has been happening in the world. Uh, but on the other hand, there might be some wounding through things related to Neptune and Pisces and Uranus and Taurus. And one of the things we associate with Neptune and Pisces are liquids, anything that has an unclear or ill-defined boundary. So, Neptune has to do with liquids, in particular water, and what has just happened. We've seen tremendous flooding in Libya, that kind of wounding. What happened right before that? Well, Uranus breaks up the pattern. Taurus is an earth sign. We had a horrific earthquake in Morocco, not far from Marrakesh. And so now adjustments have to be made to deal with the wounding. Okay, so that is sort of the lunar month in general. I would say the primary focus is on working out the problem, working out the details. We have some very good aspects to help us with that. We are trying to make these visions a reality, but we have some finances, some power behind it all to make it work. We're trying to deal with wounding in the world. We still have some underlying stress and tension in the world. Uh, there are going to be times when people or governments overspend. Uh, but by the way, Venus is making a sextile to Mars up here and a trine to Chiron. So I should put a little blue circle around Mars up here, over like that. But, what does this mean? Well, it means that, again, this is just a good aspect. Finances and personal creativity will help heal the wounding and bring about action in a good way. And thus, Mars, it's making a somewhat weak opposition to Chiron. So we've got wounding that we're going to be paying attention to, but we're trying to work out the details, and there's going to be a lot of assistance in that regard to make things work out. So, kind of a mixed month. Uh, both some tensions, some wounding, but also a lot of good things in the works. Now, if we look to see how this is affecting America in particular, there are some things going on in this chart. I've got the July 2nd, 1776 chart for America on the inside, transits on the outside, and some of the things going on in this chart are going to be around for most of the fall. In particular, we still have transiting Pluto very close to an exact conjunction with natal Pluto. It's not going to be exact this fall, but it spends most of the fall being very close. And this means there are still threats to our democracy, both from within and without. Pluto is a planet of death and transformation traditionally. And whenever a country has a Pluto return, it either has to uh, sort of have a rebirth or it dies. So right now we're trying to renew and rebirth our democracy. Uh, we have seen a lot of political trouble over the past year or so as exact conjunctions of Pluto have taken place. We've seen threats from Russia. This fall, as things are getting ready for trials involving Donald Trump, again, we're experiencing a great political divide in our country. Uh, Different visions, different ways of looking at things. We have some people who are trying to usurp the democratic process. So, once more, we have to find our footing as a democracy. Now, the other thing we have going on here is transiting Chiron is conjunct natal Chiron. Transiting Chiron is retrograde and moving away from that, but we're still within this period. I'm using about 2-degree orbs throughout. We're still within this period where we're experiencing wounding. And last summer, transiting Chiron spent the whole summer in a very near conjunction with natal Chiron. And this has happened before. It happened back in the early 70s. And when it's happened, we usually have great political wounding in the country. In the 70s, it was Nixon, Agnew, both had to resign, and it was Watergate. Uh, and this time it's the trials and tribulations and transgressions of Donald Trump that have greatly wounded the country and are tearing the country apart in many ways. However, uh, we also tend to get some people who respond to the transcendent aspect of Chiron. And we see that publicly in the way that our judicial system is sometimes working uh, to address these wounds. Not always, but we've seen some very good judges out there. Back in the 70s, we saw the very fine work of the Senate Select Committee to investigate Watergate. This time around, we saw some very fine work by the January 6th committee. Okay, let's see, what else is going on? Well, the lunar nodes are making very strong squares to the moon up here in Capricorn and Mercury down here in Cancer, and that is creating some stress and tension for the people. We're all feeling sort of an underlying stress and tension these days. And let's see. Oh, we also have, let's see, Mars today making a strong square to, let's see, the natal sun. And that is going to create some tensions this month, which could go from verbal violence to actual physical violence. Now, the sun and moon conjunction at 21 degrees Virgo is making a very strong a very strong conjunct. I'm having trouble saying that word. Must be Mercury retrograde. Conjunction. A very strong conjunction with natal Neptune. Okay. And natal Neptune is squaring natal Mars. So we're trying to work out details, but as a country, we have a tendency to create and promote a lot of misinformation. And that misinformation gets people riled up, Mars and Gemini. And so we have some things here which could result in some violence. But just as with this new moon chart in general, when we look at the transits applied to the USA chart, there's a lot of good things going on, which are going to be helping us deal with the tension. And let's see, in particular, we have Neptune making a sextile to natal moon, transiting Neptune, making a trine to natal Mercury, and transiting Neptune, also making a sextile to natal Pluto. This is going to make it easier to enact our visions, bring good visions about, and this is going to help ameliorate and release a lot of the tension out there. Let's see, what else do we have? We have Uranus. Transiting Uranus is making a trine to this natal Neptune. Okay, so even though there's going to be some tension generated in this chart that could lead to violence, we also have good things going on, which can alleviate stress, help to alleviate stress. Uranus is creativity. That is going to be working well this month as it makes a trine to Neptune. And in the transits, it's making a trine to Sun and Moon up here. Okay, so that bodes very well. And let's see, we also have, it looks like, a sextile from transiting Chiron to natal Mars. That can help bring out the sweeter, more transcendent side of Chiron, and it can ameliorate some of the aggression. So hopefully we don't have too much violence occurring this month. We also have a sextile from transiting Venus at 14 degrees Leo to natal Saturn, which is at 14 plus degrees of Libra. And this too is going to help stabilize things. Uh, Venus represents the pleasure principle, the things we enjoy and that we want. Saturn is regulation. So maybe we're going to wind up with some beneficial financial regulation or regulation that is pleasing to the people. And let's see, what else do we have going on right now? Well, there is going to be a quincunx from Jupiter at 15 plus degrees Taurus to Saturn at 14 plus degrees Libra in the natal chart for America. And remember, quincunx, that is an aspect of adjustment. So with Jupiter in Taurus here, Taurus often represents finances. Jupiter is expansion. Saturn is restriction, control, and regulation. It's in Libra, which has to do with others. One of the things I anticipated happening around this time, which does seem to be occurring, is that there are going to have to be some adjustments and compromises made regarding the country's budget. Jupiter represents expansion of finances and spending. Uh, Saturn in Aries represents those other people out there who want to rein it in and bring it under control. So things will probably work out best if some agreements and compromises are made on both sides. Okay, now let's see, is there anything interesting going on that I haven't talked about? It looks like I think I've just about covered everything here that I wanted to mention. And so that's it. Uh, as with the world in general, we're going to have some stresses, some tensions, in particular, stresses to our democracy, wounding to deal with, which is most likely to be both political and from global warming, but could be other things. But we're working out the problem and we're working on integrating our visions. Some violence, probably verbally or physically, but some things which will also help release those tensions and stresses. So hopefully it doesn't get too overblown. So it's going to be an interesting month ahead for America, an interesting fall. Things to work out, but ways to work them out peacefully. And if we all remember to take the high road and be kind to one another, uh, then it won't be too much of a problem. Okay, let me stop sharing at this point. And that's going to be it for today. Just a quick look at today's new moon and at how today's new moon might impact America. And as we see in the chart, we also see it happening in the world. There, as I said, those stresses out there, those ongoing problems we're dealing with, but we're finding ways to work the problem, finding ways to deal with these situations. As I keep saying over and over, if we take the kind road, if we compromise when necessary, and if we show kindness to one another, kindness and respect, then things can work out in a good way. Okay, so that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you again soon. So long.